Yeah, and I think that kind of really comes onto our sort of next part about that sort of generational gap. Because lots of our students felt 62% of secondary said that older generation aren't able to help with the older problems, with online problems, and 75% of primary said teachers didn't understand the apps children use. And they also, some of them said that while they would go to a trusted adult about online problems, they would actually, a lot of them said, but actually I might go to an older sibling instead because they understand it a bit more. So my next question is for Merve. So, like, do you think it's worth teachers being in the know of what apps and games young people are using? And, you know, how do we keep up with that?
Yes, thank you for the question. I think, and this ties in a lot of the conversation that's happening at this point already. I think the reality is, you know, there's always going to be new technology that's coming out, and there's going to be a new platform, and that platform is going to work in different ways. I think it's incredibly important to at least understand the basics of how these platforms work, especially how algorithms work, how the basic functions of what kids are what students and even what adults and educators are doing using these tools. You don't have to know everything about it, but understanding how they work and the basic functions will allow you to connect to something that's actually much deeper and more important, which is that the decisions that these kids make, the interactions that these kids might have, are rooted off a disposition that they have in this experience. And I think it's important for students and educators and caregivers to recognize that the decisions we're making is rooted not just because, oh, well, I'm online, this is just how Instagram works or how TikTok works, but there's a feeling, there's a need, there's a connection that they're looking to be a part of, that they're missing out on, that they want to be a part of, that they want to explore, that they're interested in. And what is it about that experience that's driving them, that they have questions about, that they are curious about? And how do you bring that into conversations that are very real, very much in front of them? And I think it's important for us as educators, as we are hearing about all these new tools that are out there, we know our kids are going to, our kids, our children, excuse me, are going to be gravitating to these tools. So having a basic understanding of how they work and just being honest and saying, I actually don't get why you all like love TikTok so much. Walk me through it. But addressing it in a genuine interest, not in a, I want to try and figure it out so I can try and catch you in how you do things or what you're doing wrong or right. It's really about a genuine interest about your students or about your children and what they're using, what they love about it, and then really infusing those fundamental aspects of relationships, of thoughtful understanding of the way that we communicate and how that then stems into this particular tool, right? That's the most important part of why we should be trying to understand the tools, is really to better understand how we then get down to the root of these real discussions, and that is kids have real feelings and experiences and things they're trying to meet with using these online experiences. So how are we meeting them where they're at when we discuss it with them?
That's really, yeah, that's a really good point. Because quite often you can be quite, sort of cynical about, you know, these things that I think young people are using, and they pick up on that. I think that's really, really good advice. Okay, next one again is for Nicola. So we've already kind of seen from our Vote to Book results and from the conversations that there is a sort of lack of, I'm not sure if trust is the right word, but that there is a feeling that teachers don't understand and don't really get what they're using. So how can teachers sort of support students if they feel that, if the students feel that teachers don't get it?
Yeah, there was a quote from a student I spoke to, I wanted to start with, which was, we can't expect adults to have the solution if they don't know the problem. And I think that was sort of captures what we've been talking about here. And I think there is a need, as we've said, for teachers, parents, all of us to be, you know, more aware of technology as it develops and have some awareness at least. But actually, one thing that I've learned a lot, or one thing that I've had to learn as an educator as well, is that sometimes you aren't the expert in the room. So I think when you go into teaching, when you go into being an educator in some form, you kind of have that power imbalance at first. And especially when you're early on, you want to know so much, you want to be the expert in the room, you want to have all the answers. And I think along with what Will and Merve have all said, is that actually the thing I found really empowering as an educator is to realize that sometimes I'm not the expert in the room, and to actually, you know, co-create resources with young people, or even the peer educator or peer led, as was said earlier by Will. And I think this is really useful because there is going to be that generational gap. We aren't always good, even if we do upskill ourselves in the different technology. I think there's always going to be that gap of what it is to grow up as a teenager or as a young person with this technology in your life to the level that it is today. So I think being able to, as Merve said earlier, be very open, have these discussions, have a genuine interest to understand why it is that they're engaging with these platforms. Is it to gain a sense of connection and belonging or intimacy or whatever it might be, to try and understand what's driving that and why they're using the platform. It can be really useful. And then to use the kind of problem-based approach, I think, is really, really effective. And I found that in my own research and interventions in schools when it comes to bullying, that actually if you bring problems with young people or ask them about, what are the problems that you're experiencing in your school, and then work with them, co-construct, possible solutions to these problems, I think this is a really powerful model that can be used to try and address these problems as well around online safety. And I think it will build the trust, because they'll feel that the teachers and parents are being more open, and then they're more likely to disclose what is really happening, which is, a key factor in trying to help with adjustment and solutions.
Yeah, thanks.